Daniel stood in front of the door longer than he should have, his hand hovering over the knob as though the simple act of opening it might change the course of his life. It wasn't just a door, it felt like a threshold into something unknown. For years, he had told himself he didn't need this anymore, didn't need the nerves, the questions, the hope that flickered only to get snuffed out. Since losing Emily, his wife, he had built his days into patterns that left little space for surprises. His children gave him enough purpose, enough joy, enough reason to stay steady. But tonight, he couldn't hide from the quiet voice that asked if maybe, just maybe, there was room for more. The knock came, soft but certain, and he pulled the door open. The woman standing there wasn't at all what he expected. Claire, that was the name his coworker had whispered when nudging him toward this date, insisting she was sweet, genuine, the kind of woman who gets it. She didn't come dressed like someone auditioning for perfection. Her dress was simple, a deep navy that caught the porch light, and her hair wasn't meticulously curled but pinned back with a few strands framing her face. She looked nervous, her fingers twisting slightly at the strap of her purse, her smile tugging cautiously as if asking permission to exist in this moment. "Hi," she said, her voice as gentle as her appearance. "You must be Daniel." He nodded, lips curving into a polite smile though his pulse had quickened. "Yeah, and you're Claire." The way she exhaled at hearing her name surprised him, as if she had been holding her breath until he said it. "You're not too early," he added quickly, trying to bridge the silence that hung there. "I was just." He glanced at the table inside, already set with 2 plates, candles flickering low, "getting ready." Her smile grew a fraction, but then she did something unexpected. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping, carrying words that would change the entire tone of the evening. "My kids are in the car," she whispered. Daniel froze. For an instant, the world narrowed to the sound of his own heartbeat. He blinked, certain he must have misheard her. But the way her eyes darted toward the curb made it clear she meant exactly what she said. His gaze followed hers, and sure enough, the faint outline of a van sat under the streetlight, the faint hum of the engine still running. He could just make out the silhouettes of little heads pressed against the back windows. His throat tightened. Children. She had children. And she hadn't said anything until now. Claire seemed to catch the shift in his face, her own expression tightening with panic. "I know," she rushed out, her words tumbling over each other. "I should have told you earlier, but most men, they don't even let me finish the sentence before they're done. I couldn't get a sitter tonight, and I didn't want to cancel again. I didn't want you to think I wasn't serious. They're good kids. They won't be any trouble." Her hands twisted against each other, the nerves spilling out in every movement. Daniel's mind spun, but not in the way she feared. It wasn't judgment that froze him. It was recognition. He knew the scramble of late nights, the desperate calculations of whether to cancel, the weight of showing up anyway because you wanted so badly to feel like more than just a parent. He had lived those nights. His own kids had been his anchor and his excuse, his shield and his reason. Looking at her now was like looking at a reflection of all the hidden battles he fought himself. But still, words eluded him. Claire's eyes dimmed as silence stretched. She stepped back, as though retreating from something inevitable. "I'll take them home," she murmured, her voice cracking around the edges. This was a mistake. Her hand shifted toward her purse strap, her body already half turned. And that was the moment something inside him rebelled. "Wait," he said, sharper than he intended, though there was no harshness in his tone, only urgency. She froze, glancing back at him. Daniel softened his voice. "Don't go. Bring them in. Really, it's okay. I understand." Her eyes widened, surprise flashing across her face as if she had never expected those words. She studied him, searching for sarcasm or pity, but found none. Only the sincerity of a man who knew exactly what it felt like to stand where she stood. For the first time since she arrived, her shoulders eased, just barely. A breath left her lips, shaky but lighter than before. She looked at him as though he had given her permission to hope. Daniel stepped aside, opening the door wider, not just for her, but for the world she carried with her. Claire walked quickly down the short path to her car, her heels crunching softly on the gravel, and Daniel stood in the doorway watching her with a mixture of nerves and something he couldn't quite name. The porch light cast her in a faint glow as she opened the van door. The dome light flickered on, and there they were, 2 small faces blinking at the sudden brightness. One boy clutching a toy truck in his lap, his eyes wary, and a little girl with pigtails, her gaze bouncing between her mother and the tall stranger waiting at the house. Claire spoke to them softly, her voice carrying just enough for Daniel to catch snippets. "It's okay, babies, he's nice. Just come inside." The boy looked uncertain, holding onto the seatbelt strap, while the girl's lips pressed into a thin line of suspicion. Daniel recognized that look. His own daughter had worn it the first time she'd seen him talking to another woman after Emily's passing, like the whole world might tilt without her permission. Claire coaxed them out, one small hand in each of hers, and walked them toward the porch. The boy's sneakers scuffed against the ground, and the girl hugged a stuffed rabbit tightly to her chest. When they stopped in front of him, Daniel instinctively crouched down so he wasn't towering over them. "Hey," he said gently, his voice warm but quiet. "I'm Daniel." He gave a soft smile, not forcing it, just letting it rest easy. "I've got a son and daughter about your ages. They're spending the night with friends, but they'd love to meet you sometime." The boy's grip on his truck loosened, and the girl tilted her head slightly, her curiosity winning over her caution for just a moment. Claire's shoulders, tense since she'd left the car, dropped an inch in relief. Inside, the air felt different with little feet padding across the hardwood floor. Daniel found himself moving around the kitchen without thinking, pulling out extra plates, filling glasses with juice. He had made enough pasta and garlic bread for two, but thankfully there was more than enough for four. Claire settled the kids at the table, smoothing their hair, whispering encouragement as they glanced around shyly. Daniel slid bowls in front of them, and soon the room filled with the ordinary but comforting sound of forks against plates, the crunch of garlic bread, small satisfied hums. Ethan, the boy, spilled his juice halfway through, the cup tipping onto the table and spreading across the wood. His face flushed red, eyes wide as though waiting for someone to scold him. But Daniel only chuckled, grabbing a towel from the counter. "Don't worry, buddy," he said, dabbing at the spill with practiced ease. "Happens every night in this house." Ethan blinked at him, startled by the kindness, then gave a shy grin before returning to his pasta. Claire's eyes shimmered, gratitude written all over her face. She didn't have to say a word, Daniel could read it in the way her hand lingered near his when he passed the bread basket. By the time dinner ended, both kids were yawning. Lily had stretched out on the couch with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, while Ethan curled beside her, his toy truck clutched in one hand. The soft glow of the lamp lit their faces, their breathing steady, safe. Claire watched them for a long moment before whispering, "You didn't have to do this." Her voice trembled, though it was steadier than when she'd first whispered at his doorstep. "Most men would have sent us away. They usually do." Daniel leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "Most men don't know what it's like to juggle everything, to feel like you're always apologizing for being a parent. But I do. You don't need to explain yourself to me." Her lips parted as though she wanted to argue, but instead she let out a shaky laugh, a tear slipping free before she brushed it away quickly. "You have no idea how rare it is to hear that." "Actually," Daniel said quietly, "I think I do." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, but full, two people sitting in the same storm, recognizing each other. Claire's gaze softened, and she leaned back slightly, her hand brushing against his where it rested on the counter. The touch was light, almost accidental, but Daniel didn't pull away. He let it linger. For the first time that night, the tension that had sat heavy on both of them dissolved into something easier. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of the kids' sleepy breathing, the warmth of company, it all wove together into a fragile but real sense of home. As Daniel looked at Claire, her face softened by lamplight, he realized this wasn't just another date that would fade into memory. It felt like a turning point, a doorway into something neither of them had dared to hope for again. And with the children asleep in his living room and her hand resting gently against his, he knew he wasn't afraid anymore. Neither was she.